Hey everybody, welcome back to The Practice. We are Jay and Tracy and Hope. This is our puppy who wanted to be in the chat today. We're just going with it. We're really glad that you're here. So this is our midweek video series. So, we take what we're learning on Sundays and then we really try to make it really practical for us and find something that we can practice in our spiritual practice. So we're just gonna go a little bit deeper with what we've been talking about. But speaking of Sunday, it was so great to be together on Sunday. There were so many people there, like 280 people were in the auditorium. It was awesome. We had a great time. Josh and Joelle did such a great job. It was so great to get to meet them, get to hear their hearts. They're so pure-hearted and love God and love what they're doing. And we love being able to get to know them and have the parents there on Sunday night to meet them, have the teens meet them for lunch. It was really cool. So definitely be praying about that, about what God wants for us here in Orange County with them. But I wanted to tell you what's coming up this week. First of all, Wednesday night, we have our teen midweek. So all of our teens, high school and junior high, we're having midweek at the building. Please come. We've been developing some really great conversation and building some great momentum. And so we would love to have all of you there. That will be really great. It's at 7:30 on Wednesday night. And then this weekend, it's really cool because there's a lot of cool stuff happening. Because there's 2 different conferences happening this weekend in Orange County. We've got some guest speakers that are coming to speak to us. So Saturday night, we're having our Deeper Dive teaching event for Orange County, and Ed Anton is going to be speaking to us at 7 p.m. on Saturday night at the building. You don't want to miss this. This is going to be really, really helpful for us. So I really want to encourage you to be there. And then on Sunday morning, we're going to have a great worship service together at 10 a.m. Marshall Mead is in town, and so he's going to be there to help us with the worship, and Brian Craig is going to be there to help us with the worship. And then Doug Wins from the Houston Church is going to be preaching to us. So it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a great weekend. Then we head into March, and we'll have 3 Sunday services, the first 3 Sundays of March, and then the last Sunday of March will be a small group service. So that's what's kind of looking ahead as we get into it, right?
But as for tonight, we are going to start with a practice. So you're going to need your notebook, and I'm going to give you some instructions to do this little exercise. So want you to think about a time that you were in a group in the church that just felt great. It just felt like everything flowed well, and you have really great memories when you think back to that group. And you may feel great about the group that you're in right now, which is awesome. Not to discount the group you're in now, but this is an exercise in retrospect. So I want you to go back to a group that you remember, maybe the one that you were baptized in, or a group in the campus or whatever. And I just want you to jot down, take no more than 5 minutes in your group to jot down your memories of that, like how you felt in it, and a couple of cool things that you remember about that group. After you're done with that, after your 5 minutes is up, we're going to go around. I want you to share what you wrote down, and everybody's just going to kind of take notes on what they're hearing, so that at the end, after everyone has gone, then you guys can read back through the notes that you took and find some commonalities, find some things that, some threads that were common to all the groups. And don't take too long to do this exercise, because then we have more stuff to do, but definitely take the time to do that right now. So, ready? Go.
All right, so welcome back, and hopefully that was good, and then we'll talk about that a little bit more as we discuss what we're doing tonight. So, we've been talking about belonging to God and being adopted into His family, and then what that feels like. And so these last couple of weeks have been really good as we've kind of discovered, like, this is who we are, and this is who God has made us to be. And we spent time talking about, since we belong to God, then we are a people who love unconditionally, and we are a people who forgive repeatedly. And so these are the things that we believe that we are becoming because we belong to God. And so as we've been digging into that passage in Ephesians chapter 2, first we were talking about God's handiwork, which He prepared in advance for us to do. And then we got down to this whole thing in verse 19, and I want to read this again for us today. It says, "Consequently, you are no longer foreigners and strangers, but fellow citizens with God's people." And so you remember that's what we really dug into last week, this idea of being a naturalized citizen in God's new kingdom, and we get to come in and we see what a beautiful thing it is. But then he goes on, and this is the imagery that we want to really focus on tonight. It says also members of his household. And so this is such a cool thing to think about, being a member of God's household. Mm-hmm. And so maybe a way for us to think about this is the contrast between being a guest in someone's house and a member of the household.
Right.
And you know what it's like when you were preparing for guests to come over to your house.
Right.
What happens when
you clean?
You clean up the house, right?
To make the fake house,
yes.
as some have been known to call it.
Right. I mean, how many people have said that? Oh, I'm so sorry. You're here, and my house is not usually a mess. Yes, it is. It's always a mess, except when the guests are there. And that's okay. But when there's guests that are there, then everybody goes into turbo clean mode, and you're trying to clean up everything and make sure that the right towels are in the guest bathroom and that everything is done well there.
You're cooking and setting the table. And
right. You give them the good silverware.
Yes.
Or at least the good dishes, and you just make sure that all the guests have everything that they need.
Yes. The guest gets the best.
The guests get the best. But the kids or the members of the household, we're all pitching in to make sure that goes well. And when you have a guest come over, I mean, I'll go somewhere and somebody will call me ahead of time and go, hey, I want to prepare for your visit.
Yeah.
What kind of coffee creamer do you like? Do you take cream in it, or what can I get you for breakfast? Yeah. It just makes you, like you're treated.
You're being served.
You're being served, which is really awesome.
Do you have any dietary restrictions?
When you're
I do.
A member of the family, you get up and you're like, you make your own breakfast. That's such a beautiful thing when the kids are able to make their own breakfast, and you get to that point. But as a member of the family, you are the one actually pitching in to help create this great environment for the guests.
And that's what happens to us when we become Christians. We move from being the guest to being the host.
Right.
We move to being a part of the family. And so we, metaphorically, we move from the living room or the dining room to the kitchen, because we know that's where all the work happens.
Right. All the good stuff happens in the kitchen. And so as a church, this is what we're becoming, is this kind of this group of people that all of us are in the family together, and we're really working together to create this great and beautiful environment that God wants us to create. Since the beginning of the Bible, the beginning of the story, all the way back in the garden, God has been inviting mankind to partner with him, to be able to bring his vision of the kingdom into reality. And then we've had this tension of mankind wanting to go this way, and then God is always pulling us back this way, and trying to get us to come back to him. And so then he, because after Jesus was, resurrected and then went back to heaven, and he sent us out and was like, now you go and you create the kingdom here on earth. And this is what I want the kingdom to be. And so he put us in this church, in this group of people, this ecclesia, this group of people that is called out from the world to be able to live in a different way, and to be able to love people in a different way. And this is why we've been doing this thing of since we belong to God, we are a people who blank, because we're trying to think, who does God want us to be? And so we wanted to look at this passage, this very familiar passage in Acts chapter 2, which many of us have seen before, but this is a great snapshot of what the kingdom can really look like, when it's going well here on earth. Because a lot of times it goes well,
and then sometimes it doesn't.
And then sometimes it doesn't.
Until it just doesn't. But we need to keep in mind what we're trying to become. It's just like that picture that when you want to lose weight.
Right.
And so you go back in your photos and you find a picture of when you looked great, when you were perfectly in shape or whatever. You put it on your refrigerator and you go, okay, this is going to motivate me on my diet or whatever you're doing. I'm going to keep looking at that picture because that's my goal. And that's really what Acts 2, 42 through 48 is. It's a snapshot of what we want to become.
Right. So let's look at this passage. Familiar to many of us, but just don't stop listening just because you've heard it before, and really look at it here. Verse 42, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. So this is such a great picture of what the family of God looks like. And I love that word devoted. It says that they were devoted to these things, the fellowship and the breaking of bread and to prayer. They were devoted. And so that idea of devotion, you think of the loyal dog that just loves his owner to the very end, and then even after maybe the owner has passed on, the dog who won't leave their side. Or you think of Ruth and Naomi, when she was like, hey, listen, your people are my people, your God is my God. Where you go, I will go, because I'm devoted to you. Someone who says, no matter what is going on, we're in it till the end. It's ride or die. I'm here with you. No matter what anybody else does, I'm here with you.
And that's what we want our families to be.
Right.
We want our families to be, that would be a functional family.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
We're thinking, this is what it would look like if we were a functional family. But the problem is that all of us are dysfunctional.
Right.
That's the truth, to varying degrees.
Right.
We all grew up in situations that were dysfunctional because we're human. And even the families we're creating today, these are, at best, they're dysfunctional families. We're trying to become functional, but we are dysfunctional.
Right.
So when we're looking at what we want to become, we have to sort of acknowledge, okay, we are working against our human nature here, and we are trying to become something that we've never really seen perfectly displayed before us before. And I think a good way to do that is to think about, okay, well, where have we come from and where are we going? Sometimes you don't really know that your family's dysfunctional until you see another one, like, oh, I didn't realize that they never yell at each other.
Right.
I grew up where we all yell at each other, but they don't over there. You don't even know that exists until you get out there. And so I think taking a look at our own personal church history, like we did last year, we talked about taking these concepts of leadership and evangelism, discipleship, and trying to, we've seen these things applied in maybe unhealthy ways. And so we kind of just get rid of them altogether instead of trying to find, well, what would be the healthy way?
Right. So what we're wanting to look at today is the idea of healthy devotion. And what does healthy devotion to the church look like? So there's, a couple different levels that I want you to think about today. And one of them is our South Orange County church level. And this idea of this whole group, there's 174 of us, right, in the South Orange County church, which is awesome. And so how can we be devoted to this group? What does healthy devotion look like for that? Yeah. And it's been so cool just to see, the way that so many people are jumping in to help serve and help make our in-person worship services really go off great. The people that take care of the children's ministry, the ushers, the people that are on the security team, the worship team, and just so many people are stepping in to help. And it's this idea of being devoted, and then even in how church is worked out now, like being devoted in the sense of being generous. We know that a part of our discipleship to Jesus is our generosity. It is our offering back to God, and being able to be rich in good deeds and generous with what we have, like I talked about on Sunday. And so even our financial giving to the church is a huge part of our being devoted to that. And so it's great to think about, what does healthy devotion look like? Sometimes we can get caught up or triggered by, a certain thing that has happened. And then because we can't figure out how to process that well, then we just stop allowing that part of our heart to grow. And that can happen when we're looking at the time that we give to the church, or the energy that we give to the church, or the money that we give to the church. And so, but leaning into what does healthy devotion look like, I think is really good for us to be able to do.
The other level is on the small group level,
right?
So we've got that bigger church level. We'll come back to talking about that. But we've also got the small group level and how we can work this out in our life. What does a healthy devotion to a small group look like?
Right.
So, and so we've had our past that has been, partially dysfunctional. And so, we go back and think about in the good old days, or in the old, what is it called? I don't remember. People always talk about your old school. That's what it is. They try to say. Old school was, we have meetings of the body.
Right.
You have a meeting of the body, and you got to be at that meeting of the body. And of course, I'm exaggerating this, and it's almost a caricature, but everybody comes to the meeting of the body. And if someone's not there, then I'm going to go find the Bible talk leader who's in charge of the person that's not there. You track down that person that's not there. You find out why they weren't there. Then you bring it back to me, and then we'll decide
Was it valid? Was that a valid excuse?
Was it a valid reason to miss? Was there blood shed to keep this person from coming? Yeah. No, okay, that's an exaggeration, but we could all feel that to a certain degree. It did feel dysfunctional. No one wants to go back to, it's a meeting of the body, got to be there. But then we've got, on this other side, we've got this kind of extreme, which is kind of like, now I belong to the small group. Well, I'll be there if I don't have anything else going on. Well, if I can, I'll be there, if the kids don't have something, or if I don't have something, or if, if I feel good. Mm-hmm.
It's almost sometimes like if my real life doesn't get in the way, then I can actually come to church.
Which is not healthy.
Right. That's not healthy either.
That's a not healthy devotion. Right. So neither one of these extremes is healthy. So what we're trying to do today is to come back to, well, what does it look like to be healthy? And, there's so many passages about us belonging to one another.
Right.
There's all these one another passages. You think about the scriptures about encouraging one another daily, or confessing your sins to one another so that you can be healed. Mm-hmm. What does that look like? What does it look like to have a healthy confession level, a healthy encouragement, daily level, a healthy admonishing one another. Admonishing one another, or restoring one another gently. So what does it look like to actually help each other and spur one another along, on in a healthy way, not a codependent way, or a blaming way, or a shaming way, but there's got to be a healthy way that we are supposed to be instructing one another, or we are supposed to be confessing to one another, or we are supposed to be holding each other accountable to something. And what does that look like?
Right. So, even when you think about, okay, how is our group going to grow together? Mm-hmm. I think that, we all know that if you're going to have growth, if there's going to be progress, there has to be consistency.
Yeah.
And we see this is just a life principle, right?
Yes.
So if you're working out, then you have to have consistency with it. You can't just do it once every 6 weeks and expect to see progress, or if you're practicing a musical instrument, as a teacher, Tracy will always tell her students, I would much rather that you just do 5 minutes every single day than 1 hour once a week. You're going to get much more from the consistency of every day. So in our spiritual growth and our growth with one another, we want to be able to also have that consistency with our small groups and be able to meet each other. How do we meet on an ongoing basis? And so the idea of coming together and meeting consistently with our group is something that's really good for us to be able to do. But then sometimes in a small group culture in a church, and I've seen this happen a lot of times, like we'll go, oh yeah, small groups are great. I want to be in a small group with that person and that person and that person because we relationally connect. And so it's a great group of people that I all love. But then the idea of getting together on a consistent basis may not work out the same because somebody has something on Tuesday night, somebody else has, their kid has something on Wednesday night, somebody else has school that they're doing on Thursday night. And so to be able to meet consistently, it doesn't work, but they still want to be together as a group. And so, sometimes we have to rethink that and go, okay, maybe it's okay for me to not be in a group, based on these initial relational, connections. But how can I actually find people that we can work our schedule together and we can be together? Or you look at geography and you're like, okay, if I want to be consistent with this group and meet one another, but then I have to add in the 30 to 45 minutes of drive time to get all the way from one side of town to the other, that may not be really as ideal
realistic
either.
Yeah, it's not practical. Yeah. There's always a practicality, and this is called the practice.
Right.
Because when you're trying to put things into practice, that means you're taking them out of theory.
Right.
Which everything sounds good in theory, but working it out is a little bit different. So this may be a time right now where you're really, maybe you came together this year as a group and then you realize, practically speaking, this isn't really working.
Right.
I thought it wouldn't be that big a deal to be in a group that was 25 minutes from my house, but actually when I'm trying to deal with my kids and I'm trying to get everybody to bed, it actually doesn't really work out. No love loss, it's not a heart issue.
Right.
It's just, as a matter of fact, this doesn't really work. It doesn't even build natural relationships.
Right.
Like in our small group, we live within 5 minutes of everybody in our small group. So I can borrow stuff from them. I can stop by. It's natural. There's a lot more daily living that can take place, all that stuff that we read, just because we practically live close to each other.
Right.
And we have this, we can be on a team together.
Right.
It makes sense to be on a team together.
Right. And there's some of our groups, so we've had these groups going since like May of last year. So what is that, 10 months or so? 9 or 10 months. And there's been great progress with a lot of those relationships. But then there's some other groups that are now starting to go, okay, maybe we could make some adjustments, and maybe we could move some things around because our schedule may be changed and it's not working the same, or the geography has changed. We added people and it expanded our geography, and that maybe that's not working as well as it could be. So it's good for us to think, what would devotion look like? What does healthy devotion to one another look like? And can we maybe make some adjustments to that?
Yeah, this is the time to do it.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. But so you've got the practical side of the devotion, but then you have also the heart side of the devotion. Because, sometimes those schedule things become schedule conflicts, not really because they're schedule conflicts, but, when we have maybe hurt somebody's feelings, or our feelings are hurt, and then we're like, I'm not sure that I don't really want to go. I mean, if you're having a relational challenge with somebody in your group, and then Satan's always working. You've got a billion reasons not to go and not to be in your group. And so that's just one more to go, yeah, I probably am not going to do that. So as we think about healthy devotion too, it's good to examine your heart and go, okay, do I have any lingering conflicts that are really not resolved, or some relationships that really are not good, or I'd love to be in that group, except that one person is in there and I can't do that. Like, is that kind of stuff coming up? Does that keep you from having a healthy devotion to one another?
And I think it's important to remember that it's okay just to admit that. Like, I think that this has happened to me in groups before, where I feel like something happened with someone who, they maybe just got rubbed the wrong way, and they've tried to figure it out and resolve it, and they just couldn't. And then after a while, you just don't want to come.
Right.
But then they weren't forthcoming with that reason. So that the real heart affairs stuff, which is part of what we're supposed to be doing, is learning how to do that. And so it's okay to admit that something happened, but they won't admit it. And so then all I'm left to deal with is the schedule, because they haven't been coming. Like, maybe they haven't been there, they only come every once in a while, 1 out of every 3 times, and it always seems to be that person that feels like our group isn't close. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not there. That's why we all feel close, because we're there. Anyway, so it gets reduced down to a practical thing.
Right.
Well, I can't be there because of this or that. And so then I'm just left to talk about the schedule, which feels kind of legalistic. But it's not really about the schedule. It was really about the heart.
Right.
So it just takes an honesty. Sometimes it is a practical thing. And then other times, I'm like trying to make a shoe fit a foot that's too big or something like that. I finally got it out. But then other times it's a heart issue. And even if you can't really verbalize it and talk about every detail of what it is, at least just saying, yeah, there is something that's off. Like, sometimes we can tell something is off, and I probably need some help to talk through it.
Right. So what we're wanting us all to think about today is healthy devotion. And we want to be devoted to God's family. We are now members of God's household. So as we grow in our devotion to God's family, both on the level of our South Orange County Church and then on the level of our small group, how can we grow in our healthy devotion? So think back to the exercise that Tracy had you do at the beginning, when you were remembering some of the positive, the good things about groups where you felt really devoted and you felt connected and you felt like, I'm a part of something here. And then look at those things and see, like, can I bring those elements into my group now? Can I bring those elements into my relationship with the SOC church? How do I bring more of that in there? As I think through Acts chapter 2, how can I align myself more with that? So that we're not looking at the church as something that we do if we have time, but we're devoted to this spiritual family that God has put us in, so that we can all grow together.
Yeah. I think a really good analogy is that one you did about the team. I like that one.
Okay.
Because, I don't know, it just made sense.
Okay. And we were just talking about this earlier, and just thinking about being on a team, being on a soccer team, where if you're moving towards the end of the season and it's really going well and things are good, and you're excited about where your team is going, and you have a big playoff game that happens, and then that weekend you have to go out of town on a work trip and you can't be there for the game. So you could kind of handle it one of two ways. One is that your team goes on and plays without you, You go do your work and then you show up at practice the next time and you warm up and you go out and you practice and you play. Or the other way is that when you're out of town at the work thing, you're at your work thing, but you're also secretly on your phone texting with all your friends. Okay, what's happening? Who's scoring? How's it going? You know, what did we win? You know, you want to know everything. You want to kind of watch it on the live stream, you know, because your heart is devoted to that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how I think that's how God wants us to be with our church. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, it takes all of us choosing that. Like, I want to be devoted to my church. Mm-hmm. I want to be devoted to one another. And I want to see what God can do with all of us. So as we go into these next few weeks, we're going to continue talking about some other things, like how do we deal with and look at healthy confession, and how do we look at healthy admonishment with each other. You know, try to bring more and more health into our relationships with one another and into our devotion to one another. So that's our practice for this week, and we hope it has helped you, and we really look forward to seeing you guys this coming weekend. See ya.